Leigh Richardson's on the show. She's with the Brain Performance Center that's based in Dallas, Texas. And it's interesting. This is one of those, as is in science, Leigh, right, is you stumble into stuff. Typically, when you have a prescription drug that cures, I don't know, hiccups or something like that, it was some drug that they were testing for, I don't know, cancer or something, right, a dandruff or something like that. And it turns out it's like, well, wait a minute. This actually works better for something that's off-label. Botox, great example. The botulinum toxin's deadly, but injected near your eyes, it freshens up your face, right? The wrinkles go away. Science is full of examples like this.
Science is, and you know, what's so interesting is we learn so much every day about the brain and how the brain works. And in the last 15 years, neuroscience has made more progress than all the time before that.
And it's one of those areas, and the brain to me is fascinating because you hear these stories about people who are savants or people who are autistic, and yet, you know, the Rain Man example has ties to Cincinnati, right? The Dustin Hoffman character. But there's a real guy down in Huntington, West Virginia, had a photographic memory, or people who are able to have instant recall of pretty much everything. Everyone has that ability because we all have the same body part. We all have the same brain, and yet it's just the wiring. Once we can figure out those neurotransmitters and pathways, that's really the holy grail of this. So you said we've made a lot of progress in the last few years. It seems like maybe, I don't know, we're like we know about 3% of what the brain does. Is that accurate?
I don't think we have any idea how much more there is to learn. I work with the brain every day, and it's amazing to me. You know, it comes from a brain gets dysregulated, and by that I mean you get anxiety or depression or ADHD, and at some point in your life, your brain may get dysregulated. There's genetics that are involved. There's physical trauma. Anytime you hit your head, you change the way that brain's wiring and firing. And I got into doing what I do because when my son was in second grade, he got hit by a car. And we were cool until fifth grade. And fifth grade rolled around and we had big problems and I had to figure that out. But emotional trauma has the same impact on the brain. In my opinion, emotional trauma is more devastating to the brain than physical because the bruises go away, the swelling goes down, but that emotional trauma lives in that subconscious. And then last but not least, stress. And Scott, think about the last 2 years. I mean, what has stress done to your brain?
Yeah, absolutely. And we always thought the brain was a static thing, but it's fluid, right? Is it not only, as you mentioned, physical trauma, such as sadly a car accident your child was in, but PTSD, soldiers, abuse trauma, things like that. It rewires your brain. It really is the only part of your body that does that.
Well, you know, the brain, all you have going on up there, you mentioned neurotransmitters, and those are chemical interactions, and those come from your gut. What you've got going on in your brain is electrical frequencies, and it's how you change those electrical frequencies. And the study that you mentioned in the beginning, it was looking at the connectivity and how the brain shares information, and timing in the brain affects connectivity. Because when you think of the brain, think of a computer. It's nothing but networks and hubs.
Yeah, but the twist, though, as you said, Leigh, is that, okay, computer is not influenced by stress and diet and anxiety and depression. I guess, is the goal really to make human beings more like computers?
No, I don't think that's the goal. I think the goal is to increase knowledge within human beings. I mean, so many people don't understand what the lack of sleep does to your brain or what eating a lot of sugar does to your brain. There's so many, lifestyle choices that we can all make. Really, we can create good change in the brain by just looking at our lifestyle choices. How much time do you spend a day looking at a screen? There's some good research that University of North Carolina did that shows smartphones can change the cognition in the brain. And think about it, Scott. I used to know 25, 30 phone numbers. I know my family's phone numbers now. That's it. I don't need to know that information. The brain gets lazy. I don't need to know that. It's in my phone.
You know what, though? I'll push back on that one. That so anything, Leigh, right, is changes your brain. So any exposure to anything external, emotional, physical, whatever, it's rewiring your brain. I don't know if that's a bad thing not to know the phone numbers. You don't need to know them, much like I don't know how to tether a horse, right? Or churn butter. I don't need to know that because, well, I don't do that because I just go to the store, got it a horse, right? So same thing here. I don't need to know phone numbers because it's already, I don't think that's a bad thing, but if you'd ask a previous generation, here's a smartphone with no instruction, figure it out, they'd look at you like, well, I don't know how to do that. But we do, right? So I think maybe your brain just changes what, I think your brain changes it. Like my brain, I'm pretty stupid, and I think, my glass is pretty full. Like, if I have to learn something else, something is going to get, at the bottom is going to get kicked out. If I have to learn, I don't know, trigonometry, I'm going to learn I'm going to forget how to tie my shoes. My brain has no more capacity for learning. It's over, Leah. My bucket is full.
I feel that way, Scott. I'm finishing up a PhD program, and there are days that I'd say to myself, I need a data dump. I just need to dump some of this data out.
Right.
But, remember one thing about the brain. The brain has this philosophy, use it or lose it. Mm-hmm. So when you quit using neural pathways, those neural pathways just kind of shut down. And that's where learning new things or doing different things can be beneficial, because in memory is a whole head function. So, we just want to keep all those neural pathways open, those little neurons and dendrites wiring and firing.
Mm-hmm. Leigh Richardson, the Brain Performance Center in Dallas. Let me get back to the study, Leigh, and that is that they discovered, researchers did, lifelong alcoholic smokers, they had a stroke. And when they examined after they healed, they noticed they lost their addiction. Some, not all, but some of them lost that desire for alcohol, smoking, whatever it might be, because the brain injury shut that pathway off. And they're going, wait, if the stroke can do that physically, because we know what happens during a stroke with blood, the blood and death to brain cells and things like that, then we can maybe learn to shut those parts of the brain off ahead of time to curb that addictive behavior. That could be absolutely a game changer here. So we specifically when we map the brain, we know there are different areas of the brain, right, that are responsible for different functions and the like. How small an area is that in the brain, do you think?
Well, the study talked about the cingulate, and the cingulate goes from the back of your head to the front of your head. If you took your finger and put it on your nose and, went all the way down the back of your brain, it goes between the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. Mm-hmm. And it's a functioning neural pathway. That's how you get information from the back of your head where you process it to the front of your head where you use it. Mm. But that cingulate, it's a loop. And if that loop is overactive or underactive, or is not communicating, if the front's not communicating to the back, that puts the brain in a dysregulated state. And with addiction, it starts off, oh, I like that. Yeah. I enjoyed that. When that happens, going back to those neurotransmitters you mentioned, the brain starts kicking out this dopamine. Well, this dopamine is a really feel-good neurotransmitter, and it gets those little neurons and dendrites confused. And it goes from, I like that, to, I want that. And then the next step is, I need that. Mm-hmm. So I think what, the study showed is if the connectivity along the cingulate is changed, and then it can impact addiction. And neurofeedback, neuromodulation is currently being used for addiction all across the United States.
Okay, so when they do that, how do you stimulate the brain into breaking that? I'm guessing it's just breaking that feedback loop. It kind of sounds like what you're saying.
Well, there's different ways that you stimulate it. If you know what's going on in the brain, like if you do a qualitative EEG, let's say the brain doesn't have enough good calm processing power, you can send that to the brain. And the brain's like, yeah, I want that. And the brain will try to mimic it. It's called entrainment. Mm-hmm. So there's different ways. And we try to do that with pharmacology, with chemicals. And for some people, that's very effective, and for others, it's not. So there's different ways on a chemical level and on an electrical level that we can create change in the brain.
It sounds like, if you go back in the day where they would give you electroshock therapy, which still might be used on a smaller scale, right? But we have those horror stories, the electroshock and the shock therapy, and you get into your brain. I mean, they're kind of onto something there with the electrical pathways. It's you're shocking the whole brain, obviously, as opposed to just a small area. Is that still in practice, but scaled down more? Is that something they still would use physically?
I don't think ECT is still in practice. I'm sure it is at some point at some place in the world, but not in the mainstream. I mean, I think we've learned from that, it's amazing to me what I've learned working with the brain, Scott. Sometimes less is more. Sometimes you give the brain less and it'll have more of an impact.
Yeah. Well, for those of us, I think as you get older too, you see this, and we heard it a lot during COVID, right? When it comes to the brain and brain fog, which is, I think, something everyone experiences at one time or another, is like, wow, I can't remember something. I was just thinking about a word, a name, a location. You'll juxtapose names of people or places or things like that. Usually attribute that as a sign of old age. Is it old age? Is it stress? What is that? What causes that mental fog like that?
Well, mental fog can come from a lot of things. I mean, I have 13-year-olds that come to the Brain Performance Center and sing this week. I just got fog in my brain. I can't pay attention. And for them, maybe it's because they stay up till 1 or 2 in the morning playing video games and they're not getting enough sleep, or their nutrition is off. But cognitive decline starts to occur in the 50s. I mean, the brain's not fully developed until mid to late 20s. The 30s are rocking, man. The 40s, you kind of, maybe you're starting to plateau. The 50s, maybe you're starting to have a little cognitive impairment. The 60s, maybe you're starting to have some cognitive decline. But those are things that you as an individual can influence. We've talked about things within our lifestyle. We've talked about learning new things, but just keeping that brain in a healthy state. Meditation, mindfulness, those are things that provide the brain. It's like a valve of relief.
Man, I've tried doing that, and I'll tell you what, I think I can't do it. I can't turn it off. Yeah. I'm thinking about all the other crap I got to do. I'm sitting still.
It is hard to turn it off. And, one of the easiest things that you can do no matter where you are is when you find that brain just going. Stop, take a minute, put your hand on your belly, and try to get that breath, a real deep, slow breath. And if you're doing that, you're getting that air down around your belly button, and you can feel some movement. Where you change your breath rate, you'll change your heart rate. You can get those two to dance together. You create heart rate variability, and that is a sign of wellness.
Yeah, the Apple Watch does. If you got a smartwatch, right, it reminds you to take a minute, breathfulness, and the way I look at it, it's like I already have a wife nagging me to do stuff. I don't need a device, breaking my balls about this kind of stuff. I just say, leave me alone. I'm in the middle of something right now. Now I got to take some mindfulness and stand up and walk around. Enough already. That just adds more stress. It's supposed to de-stress me, Leigh. It's adding more stress.
I don't have an Apple Watch. I don't need any of that. I mean,
my wife got said, "Here, you need this." I'm like, "Well, this is a surrogate Michelle, is what this is, because it's like, stand up. I was quite watching so much TV. It's time to move around. Take a minute for yourself. All right, enough. It's too much already." Yeah, it's supposed to de-stress. It's a tool to de-stress. It makes me more stressed out. I don't get it. So maybe that's just me.
Well, maybe that's just not what you need,
There's a lot I need, but unfortunately, we're out of time. Leigh Richardson, the Brain Performance Center in Dallas, Texas, also wrote Turn Your Brain On to Get Your Game On, the how, what, why to peak performance. And there's so much we don't know about the brain. How much do you think right now we know about the brain? Is it hard to estimate if on a scale of 1 to 10, where are we in science?
I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, and this is my guesstimate, say we're at about a 6.
That's a lot more than I thought we would be.
That's my guesstimate. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
All right, fair enough. We're 6. I'll take 6 out of 10. That's not bad. Hall of Fame numbers right there. Leigh, all the best. Thanks for coming on the show.